This is Brian Putt. This is part 3 of a 3-part video about the value of imperfect information with uncertain demand curves. In the first part, we talked about the case study storyline and developed the reference case. And in the second part, we introduced the model and optimized the reference case. In this third part, we're going to look at the value of perfect information. When we look at perfect information, that means that we are going to get the results of the survey before we have to make a decision whether to conduct the play, and before we have to make a decision about the ticket price. After we learn the results of the survey, which is perfect, we then still have the uncertainty around the demand, 20%, and all the other uncertainties. The conditional probability matrix for the results of the survey, being perfect, looks like this. If we have high demand, is there a 100% chance that's actually, the indicator will say 100%. If we have low demand, in reality, the probability of the low indicator is 100%. Or said another way, if we see a low indicator, then the probability of low demand is 100%. So let's flip over to the model and take a look at that.
Yeah, we've optimized our reference case, which is new information. The decision was to put on the play and to charge $46.43. And now the question is, should we go do a survey to determine the demand, and can we improve our expected value NPV? So I think this first pass, we'll take this 46.43 and put it in here as our prices, and we will develop everything. So now let's look at these two charts. First of all, over here on the left, the black line represents the reference case with an NPV of 33.3. Let's just do it that way. And the blue line represents the current or active case, which is shown as 32.3, roughly $1,000 less. Well, it's $1,000 less because the blue line includes the cost of conducting the survey. So the value of information is a minus 995. It's shown here as a vertical line. And it's a vertical line because we always made the same decisions. We always developed. You can't have value of information without a change in decision. So the question is, can we improve on this? And of course we can. So the first thing we'll try to do is we've captured that result here, okay? So the first thing we're going to do is to turn off the low demand. That makes sense to us. And we did improve the net expected value, NPV, went up to 35.9. Let's just capture that, and we'll put it right down here, okay? And so that's looking much better. The value of information is 25.56. Once again, let's look at these charts. Now, if I don't develop the low demand happens 30% of the time, so 30% of the time I get 0, except I incurred the cost of the survey, right? So it's a minus 1,000 here. And then basically I follow this line going up the reference case, except I incurred $1,000. Now over here is the distribution of the value of information. So there's a lot of the time, actually 70% of the time, that I make the same decision of developing. So I'm developing the high and the mid. And as a consequence, my value of information is just a minus 1,000. I'm still using the same prices. However, roughly, I'll call it 25% of the time, I made a good decision not to develop the low demand. And then there's another 5% down here where I lost money. And why is that? And that's because if I turn on the load net, apply, you can see that some of the time, even with the low demand, it made sense to put on the play. So this little part of the curve is causing this downside. You okay with that? All right, so let me turn that off again. So now, what can we do to improve this even further? Well, maybe we should be having different demands. Well, I guess we could turn off this one. We could try that one. Let's just do that real quick like. So we're at 2556 value of information. That's obviously not a good decision. We need to develop the mid demand indicator with perfect information. So now let's see what else can we do. Oh, we can optimize these prices. So right now we're using the same prices as in the reference case, but if I want to optimize those, I can do that using my solver. And I've set it up here to maximize this MPV by changing these prices. So we'll say solve. This will just take a few seconds, hopefully. There we go. So what happened? We had 46.43, and so for the high demand it went to 54, and for the mid demand it went to 51. So I moved up my price because I knew I had high and mid demands. This 46 stayed the same because I didn't even develop it, so it didn't matter what the price was. That could be anything you wanted. So once again, let's look at this chart. So I still have this little bit of downside because I didn't develop it, but now this upside's bigger because I got better prices. Maybe lower demand, fewer tickets, but the effective revenue was higher. So why don't we capture that result as well? I guess I should be capturing whether it's perfect or not.
So here's our model. We've optimized the model for having perfect information. We've optimized the prices, and we've sold 2,090 tickets with an MPV of 37,158 and a VOI here. What I'd like to do is to examine what are the trade-offs here. So for example, we can come down here and we can look at the MPV versus the tickets sold. So if I were to develop all of the, always develop with my optimized prices with perfect information, I would reduce my MPV, but I would increase the tickets sold to nearly 3,000. That's almost a 50% increase. And so it becomes a trade-off, a personal trade-off, of whether you'd want to do that. At the same time, if I go for the higher number of tickets sold, a little bit lower MPV, which, you know, I could rationalize could be something you'd want to do. You don't want to be playing to a half-empty theater. If I did that, then the outcome could possibly be have a very poor negative outcome. I could have a P10 outcome here of a negative $8,000. Whereas if I go with this higher expected value, but the lower tickets, I now have a P10 of only minus 1,000. So I wanted to point out this part of the analysis as well. And so in the next section, we'll go on to looking at imperfect information.